Let me hit record. Hi,
Awesome.
Allison. What's going on?
Oh my God, I'm putting on my earring. My earring just fell out. So
Uh-oh.
excuse I'm refixing myself here.
It's all good.
I'm so glad this worked out. I feel like this has been such a long time in the making.
It's been a marathon. Yeah, we should get a
You know?
sticker to put on our cars that say the marathon podcast is finally commenced.
I love it.
So, where are you located?
I am in Jersey. Yeah.
Jersey. Okay.
Yeah.
Very
Jersey.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of history up there. Are you close to Manhattan? Is that
Yeah, I spent like about 2 decades in Manhattan, and now I'm in Jersey, about an hour outside of the city. Yeah, not
so?
too far.
What's the mentality that goes into being a New York, New Jersey person when you do finally say, I got to get out? Is it kind of like you go, instead of going to Florida, you go to Jersey?
Kinda. Yeah,
Yeah.
I grew up in Jersey, so I turned 18. The day I turned 18, I simultaneously graduated from high school and I pieced it out to New York.
Yeah.
And I spent quite a long time there, half my life there. And then I was one of the people in COVID that mass exodus. So yeah.
Well, and you're leading right into my first question, which is how did you get through that time period now that the world's waking up, and how has it changed the way that you do things now?
Oh my God, it changed everything. I it changed the way I do work for sure. So I am a therapist. And the idea of being a virtual therapist was something that would have blown my damn mind if you had asked me this in like 2019. Obviously, I had to become a virtual therapist for obvious reasons, and I have never actually gone back to my office. So that certainly changed my professional life. Um, but COVID was a weird thing for a million reasons, but one of them being, it kind of forced everybody to really slow down. And I noticed about myself, I was like very, very overworking. I really had a lot of high functioning anxiety. I never said no to anything. I was working 3 jobs, and then COVID happened, and I had to kind of completely shift my entire life. And my takeaway is actually it's quite nice on the slower, on like the wind down. So I always joke with my partner, like, we didn't settle down, we just slowed down, right? Like,
Right.
I don't have to go from like crazy intense New Yorker to suddenly like we're doing nothing. But actually, if we stop and take a breath of fresh air, it's quite rejuvenating.
Well, and to be in that environment in New York, it's already going crazy. My dad's was born in Brooklyn, and I have a lot of family in Long Island and Babylon
Yeah, oh,
and
yeah.
Massapequa.
Yeah.
And I remember I went there in 98. I think it was
Mhm.
98. And my cousin, she was like one of the coolest people I ever knew. One of the original hipsters, got me my first Bukowski reader, took me into the village to get sushi for the first time, all of these things. And I remember we were going to take a double-decker bus and do one of those touristy things. And she was like, "Oh my God, I hope no one sees me." I'm like, "My God, we're in New York. What are you talking about?" Like, my
Uh-huh.
brain coming from Kansas City couldn't even comprehend. Because even in Kansas City, it's much smaller. The chances of me running into certain pockets is
Oh yeah.
probably minuscule. So anyway, but um, yeah, so I've spent a little time up there. It's that has to be a lot. And I remember talking to a lot of musicians because I do jazz radio,
Right.
where they were kind of in shock because no one was in Times Square or no one was out. That would be weird.
Yeah, my husband owns 2 bars. One of them is a very famous gay bar in New York. So when everything shut down, we would have to go into the bar often just to kind of check in. Obviously, no one in it. The place was closed, and it was like cryptic. We're on Christopher and Seventh, the heart of the village. There's always, our one of our bars has gotten rated pretty consistently one of the best places in New York to people watch. And there's really like no people to watch, right? And it was just really apocalyptic almost.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So let's go back to your childhood. Did you always want to be in therapy? What was your dream?
Oh my God. So, it's funny. I actually was obsessed when I was a kid, like way too young to be obsessed with things like this, but I was really into the criminal mind and understanding forensics. And now when I say that in like 2023, it's not that big of a deal because we have all these shows like, you know, Criminal Minds, SVU, all of the forensic kind of genre of entertainment has really spiked. But that didn't really exist in like 1985 to 1990.
Yeah.
Um, so I had always wanted to become an FBI agent. That was like kind of my goal. But I loved, even when I was younger, just kind of understanding feelings, why people do what they do. So when I went to college, I had really been looking for a forensic psychology program. Now they're pretty accessible. Then they were not. So I couldn't really find a program that I enjoyed. So I switched to just plain psychology, you know, just like general psychology. And I double majored in psych and at the time it was called women's studies. Now it's more appropriately probably called gender studies and human sexuality. So I got really into understanding people under the lens of really a lot to do with like gender and sexuality. So I did all of that throughout my college, and I did a lot of internships revolving around that. I worked for Planned Parenthood. I worked on a pilot study talking about people who are at high risk for HIV and how can we change their behaviors and get them to be safer. But then when I graduated, I still kind of had that pull towards forensics. So I went to school. I actually have two master's degrees now, one in forensic psych and one in forensic mental health. And my first degree, I worked with the FBI and I did research. So I did research on, with the FBI on, the people who, you know, sex workers, people in the sex industry who had crimes committed against them, typically were killed, and, worked with like who does this stuff to them, right? So I had like a very research-based focus, a really like criminal-based focus. And it was super interesting. And I applied to the FBI and actually got in. Decided at that point, I had like multiple kind of job offers on the table. And one of them was just like in a private investigation field, wasn't with the FBI. And honestly, I was like 22 at the time, 23. I didn't want to move from New York. So that was like my biggest decision to not go to the FBI, is because I just loved New York so much. Yeah. So I stayed local, and I did that for many years. I was a private investigator, and I volunteered doing mental health. So I worked in sexual assault clinics. I worked in New York City ER doing domestic violence and sexual assault trauma immediate crisis care. And maybe like 6 or 7 years into my like heart of my career, I kind of had like this big existential moment where I just like hated being a private investigator. It's like never really what I wanted to do. I was doing like corporate crimes, so like white collar, embezzlement, things like that. It just, you know, I was good at it. It didn't interest me at all. And so I decided to go back to being in mental health. And at the time, my degree that I had originally gotten no longer qualified you for a license. Wow. So I had to actually go back because I had forensic psych, and the state of New York now needed forensic mental health. Oh. So when I went back, I was like, all right, I'm now in my mid 30s, right? I needed to do an internship, right? And I was like, damn, I don't want to go back to free work. Not even free work, I have to pay for it. So I had worked with my school to see if I could work at Rikers Island, which is a very like infamous jail in New York City, to see if I could do mental health counseling there. And they used to have a program. The program had closed, but I used my street smarts and my private investigation skills, and I found the woman who ran the program, and I kind of pitched myself. And so I did actually get the internship there. So I did a multi like 9-month stint in working in mental health at Rikers Island. And actually I was placed in solitary confinement. So it's been quite a career jump around.
Wow. You've gone through some intense things. You
Exactly.
Probably aged like a president, huh?
I did age like a president.
Wow. So talk to me a little bit about what is the fuel for you? What makes you do what you do? What is the passion for you to be in therapy?
You know, because of the history that I kind of evolved from, I mostly now, so I'm private practice now. After I ended Rikers, I did like some international trauma work, and ultimately when I came back stateside, I like landed on doing private practice. And so I've had, you know, sort of like I've been in an ER, I've been in Rikers Island in a really, in solitary confinement nonetheless. I've been internationally doing trauma care, and now I'm in private practice. And what kind of my passion is, the thing I've learned from all of these pieces of my resume that feel really disconnected is like trauma shows up everywhere, right? And you know, I certainly believe like the events that happen to us do not make us, right? But the healing of trauma and like how to get over trauma is really heavy. And so that's kind of the work that I like to do. So even in private practice now, I work with people. I do sex and intimacy and anxiety and trauma. And kind of again, the theme there is these are people that are really working with their thoughts, right? Like how to re-empower themselves, how to let go of shame, how to let go of limiting thoughts. That's like pretty deep work. And I love it. I love when I get a chance to, a lot of the beginning of that work is like building rapport, right? Someone has to feel, if they're going to be talking about these like really intense things with me, they have to trust me and like me. So it's like kind of a slower moving process. But then when I do connect with someone and they're able to share vulnerability and we're able to kind of help, I'm able to kind of facilitate them in like re-empowering themselves. Like they do all the work. I just kind of, lead. It's mind blowing, right? It's like
Yeah.
mind blowing what people can overcome.
So who's been kind of a hero for you in your life, like a role model?
I was like, my first instinct there is Oprah.
Yeah.
I just have a weird obsession with Oprah. But I honestly I follow a lot of mental health like kind of thought leaders. And I don't know that any one of them has been like my necessarily hero, but I think it's just been sort of a huge pull of all of these different philosophies. Like Brene Brown, for instance, is like very popular. Sometimes I have a love-hate relationship with her, but she has this one line that's like, you can't dress for her tragedy. And I've always really resonated with that, and I share that with clients quite a lot. We do have this idea that if we just overthink something or try to come up with every if then, we suddenly are in control. And the truth is like bad things are going to happen to us, and that's just part of the human experience. So if we really kind of go deeper and just trust ourselves more, we don't have to worry so much about all of the details of like, but if this happens, but if this happens. So she stands out to me. I love Michelle Obama. So she's I read all her stuff. I think she's pretty badass. So yeah, I think that those are my top two.
So you probably answered my next question, which is if you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now, who would it be?
Definitely Oprah and Michelle.
Yeah. So so I couldn't help but thinking, when the pandemic was going on, I kept thinking when Times Square was empty, David Lynch was going to come out with a big cigarette and his hair in the air and just yell cut.
Yep.
So talking about the FBI and the time period that you were interested in all of that, are you a Twin Peaks fan?
I was, yes. Yeah.
It's what just
Yeah.
completely, I just kept seeing Dale Cooper get that pie and coffee in there.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
So, um, of all of the things that you've done in your life and accomplished, what are you the proudest of?
Ooh, that's a great question. I've never actually been asked that. I think I was proud of the work I did at Rikers. Rikers is a pretty terrible place. It's just a really tough environment to be in. And so, just showing up each and every day was rough. But I do believe that I was actually able to kind of connect to some of the people that I talked to. I had a little bit of an edge because I worked in solitary confinement. So, I don't know if typically speaking, someone would want to come talk to me and sit and talk about their feelings. But, given that like their limited allowance out was to talk to me. And what I realized is, people, typically if you end up in Rikers Island, you had some sort of a trauma history, right? Like the skill building or the resources, or, I'm talking, and I only worked with men. Talking to people about their feelings was kind of like the first time anyone's ever asked them, like, well, why'd you do that? What was that about? What were you feeling? Do you have any coping skills? So I'm really proud of that. And then the other thing on like a more personal note is I gave up alcohol mostly. I'm like 99% there. probably now. I've been sober curious for about 3 years, and I pretty much stopped drinking. And I'm coming up to my birthday this weekend, and it's been very few drinks since then. And part of the reason I'm really proud of that is because I do have a mental health background. So I've learned a lot about alcohol, but I've only learned it in the context of addiction, right? And I would not classify myself as having an alcohol addiction. It just was really wreaking havoc on my anxiety, right? And so I spent a lot of time kind of self-teaching myself the relationship between booze and anxiety and mental health. And now I understand it a lot better. So I can share that conversation with other people and kind of help them feel less alone. But my husband does own bars. I was a New York City bartender for 18 years.
Yeah.
So this weekend is Pride in the City. I'll be, at my bar all weekend. So, it's been a little bit of a radical lifestyle change since it's just so absolutely, ever around me all of the time.
Yeah, for sure. So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 20-year-old version of yourself. You could give that version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained in your life up to this point. What would you tell that young version of you?
Oh my God. First of all, I think I'd just give her a big ass hug. Right. I think I would just say something to the effect of it's going to work out and you're doing just fine. You don't need to work so hard. I counsel a lot of teenagers, and I love teens and college students. And I find, and I was certainly, guilty of this. There's just so much comparison, right? I should be doing this. I should have things figured out. I should be getting married. And really, you're not on anybody else's timeline. You can take things as slowly as you want to go. You got nothing to prove. So I think that would be my message.
So why do you love New York so much? What's the number one reason why you love New York?
Oh my God. My love affair with New York. I would say the diversity, right? It's just, again, my bar's on Christopher and 7th. And when you just walk on that corner of New York, that little slice of New York, it's just there's families, then there's tourists, then there's a drag queen, right? Then there's suddenly a marching band. And it's just this eclectic, unbelievable place where you can see anything all the time. We're constantly only in New York, right?
Yeah.
And insert a million random scenarios there.
Yeah.
I have experience. I travel the world. I'm pretty. Actually, that's probably something I'm very proud of. I've been to. I think I was at 29 countries in the last 10 years. I haven't. I love other countries. I love other cultures. I haven't seen the mishmash of people. As obvious as it is in New York. You go to Times Square, you're seeing everything.
Oh, yeah.
Know?
Yeah, for sure. So, it's interesting. There's people out there that don't subscribe to therapy or do it, or they're not sure that they need it. Would it be safe to assume that most people that exist on the planet need it? Or is there a group of people that don't need it?
Good question. I would venture to say that everyone can benefit from therapy, but I think the piece that gets lost when someone's really anti-therapy is they don't totally understand what it is, right? So for me, and this is one woman, one opinion, one therapist out in the world, to me, the utility of therapy is not that I know better than anyone, because what do I absolutely believe you know better about your life and what you need than I will ever know. There's no textbook that's going to teach me that. But there is a huge value in speaking to someone who theoretically is non-judgmental, right? Who you can talk about your secrets. I'm ethically obliged. I can't tell anybody, right? But then just the idea of, I'm not in someone's life, I think is monumentally important, right? So I'll hear people be like, I don't need a therapist. I have a sister. It's right. But let's say you're complaining about your husband to your sister. Now you got to go to Christmas dinner with them, right? It's just a little bit of a different dynamic. You might unconsciously, subconsciously be shifting what you say, how you say it, what you're really willing to express, where just the idea of having a platform where you get to sit down and talk about what's on your mind with no judgment, theoretically, and, it goes nowhere. I think that is just hugely useful.
Yeah.
With that said, I like to meet people where they are, right? And that does take a pretty profound level of vulnerability, right? To sit and share my secrets, to even know what I'm thinking might be a stretch for some people, to name a feeling, to learn a coping skill, or to just let someone else access that, it might be too far. So, I think therapy isn't the only way to healing. There's other ways. A lot of it is community, right? Like just finding safe spaces to get to be who the hell you are in life, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're not a therapy junkie like I am, that's a good starting point.
So
You
let's
know?
get to the essence of you. Everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you ultimately run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Ooh, I love all of these questions. Who do I think I am? Who do I think I am? I pride myself, like my biggest core values are open-mindedness for sure. So I feel very strongly to just go into situations and be curious rather than correct. So I think, that's definitely who I am. I say that I want to put my eyeballs on as many things as I can put on in this life as I can get away with before I take my last breath. So I'm very explorative, I'm very adventurous. I don't love roller coasters. I'm not an adrenaline junkie in that way, but like I go scuba diving, I, go on safaris. So I do think I'm like, kind of a wild spirit, I guess. Even though I talk like this when I'm in
Right.
therapy, I've
Yeah.
had so many clients tell me like, "You're so calm. I just wish I had your energy." I'm like, "Girl, you don't see me on the weekends, right?" Like I do have anxious energy. I'm very when I get my passions around things, I get really intense. Um so yeah, that's probably another part of who I am too. I got a flare of intensity going on for me as well.
I like it. So if anyone wants to learn more about you, hire you, anything pertaining to your world, where can they go?
So my website is a note from yourtherapist.com, and my handles are pretty much the same. They vary a little bit. Some of them I think are a note from therapy, but my main social media is at asterisk asterisk one. What is that thing called? The egg? I don't know, whatever. The word's escaping me.
Oh, the at symbol. Yeah.
The at symbol. A note from your therapist.
Excellent. Allison, thank you. This has been great. We finally
Finally
bridged the
did it.
whole thing. We got